Which you said is like a nerdy job. To me, it's like a super cool job.
I always saw myself as the nerd.
Yeah, I think SIGINT is like, just from my side, but as operator's side of special operations, like I've always had huge admiration for SIGINT guys.
Yeah, for me, it's always been the opposite. Yeah. I've always had huge for the operators and for the people that are being supported. And actually, I know how dumb I am. So whenever I'm building something for someone to use, I'm like going to double, triple, quadruple check it and be like, here you go. And then someone like you will go out and actually employ the kit.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Resilient Show. And if you're checking it out, Sean and I's pecs.
Yeah.
We got the new, we got some Resilient merch, which is not available yet. I don't know.
Like Terry Crews?
Yeah, I can't do it. I can bounce, baby. but
not available yet, but coming soon.
Yeah,
so build the anticipation.
Well, I don't know. It depends. Yes, when we
as soon as a stretchy word.
Yeah, when this episode drops.
That's true.
Might be closer.
Yeah, maybe released by then.
But we're not showing you the backs.
Yeah,
the backs are pretty cool though.
They're super dope. Yeah.
But we're gonna have 3 Resilient shirts coming out to launch, right? Am I right?
Yep, 3. We're gonna drop with 3.
Yep.
And they're gonna be all super dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, today we have Bill Thompson on as a founder of Spartan Forge, and we're gonna talk more about what Spartan Forge is, but really just I think without going through your whole bio, you're have done as a chief warrant officer for you retired out of the Army and have worked at the highest level of special operations on the intelligence side. And and so, I mean, I love guys like you. Your background's made in my job, like we could not do what we did without, working hand in hand with guys like you. And so I really want to get into some of the technical stuff of what your job and your career included, some of the amazing stuff. You've been to Iraq, you've been to Afghanistan, grew up in country, like kind of country boy from North Dakota. So I'm really just interested in getting your life. But in the Army, you served in 2000. You in the Army and you started off as an electrics intelligence interceptor analyst. I'm reading it because of a 98 Juliet. That's electronics intelligence interceptor analyst.
Yeah.
And then in 2007, as you became a warrant officer and went to signal exploitation technician. And when I first started reading your bio right away, I knew that a guy like with a SIGINT background. And some of the places you've been, I'm like, man, this guy's probably done some really cool stuff. And so I want to dive into that.
Cool is a relative term, but yeah.
It's super cool, baby. But to you, it might be like the norm every day, but like, man, to the everyday American, like I think we'd be fascinated to hear, what you can share about some of that side of special operations and how we, locate targets and find targets and capture or kill the worst bad guys out in the battlefield around the world.
For sure.
But before we get into all that, I just like to get to know who you are, who's Bill. Like how'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up? And how'd you find yourself in joining the military?
Yeah, so I'll preface all of this by saying I've been listening to your podcasts because I like to get to know the people kind of through that optic before I do it. And I think there's a lot of similarities in our background. And I don't know if that's just maybe it's for everyone in our community or like the place where we find ourselves today. I don't know, but I grew up in North Dakota. Father died when I was real young. I think I was 5, or I would have been 5 that next month. We had a farm at the time. Farm kind of went under. Had a mom with myself and 5 other kids. Moved into town. She became a waitress, and just kind of middle of nowhere, North Dakota, northeastern part of the state. It's a great area. It's just technically nowhere, not the ontological nowhere, but in the northeast part of the state, farming community. Basically, if you aren't a banker that supports farmers, if you're not a student going to school there, or somewhere in the service industry for farmers, and finally, if you're not a farmer, there's not a ton for you to do there. So, recruiter showed to the school one day, and I watched all the girls swoon. He was in his green, Gumby uniform, we called them back in the day, his Army greens. And I thought that is a way for me to get out of here and go and do something else. And so I enlisted that November, I think. And I was gone that right after I graduated. I was basically out like 2 weeks later. And the rest is kind of history.
Man, hold on before we blaze past a story of
Yeah.
resilience.
Yeah.
Your dad, how old were you when your dad passed?
I would have been 5 the next month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man, I got to imagine. So you have how many brothers or sisters?
I have 2 brothers, and I have my oldest sister, Deb, and then my sister, Heather, who I haven't spoken to in a long time. There's a through line here we'll probably get into later.
Sure.
And then I have a sister, Jenny, who died a couple years back.
Wow. So
Where'd you- where'd you fall on
where do
that?
you
Yeah.
fall? on
Second
those?
from the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you guys are on a farm. Your father passed away, which I'm sure is a huge part of the farm's success, right?
Yep.
I mean, there's got to be a story of resilience in there. Like, what was that like as a child, man? Like,
I mean, I don't know if resilience is necessarily the story there. It was more or less just kind of, and I'm not trying to create a sympathy situation
No,
here
yeah.
or a pity potty situation, but it's more just like keeping my head above water
yeah,
and just kind of
surviving.
just survive. Like, I mean, we moved into like we moved a lot, ultimately, into a trailer that I took my kids back to see a few years ago that they actually condemned.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's where I left and went to the military. But for me, it was kind of like when you grow up in those types of situations, and we weren't like uber poor, but
Yeah.
you know, mom probably made 15 grand a year or something like that, which
Wow.
at that time in that place is probably like maybe somebody making like 30 or 40 grand today, something
Wow.
like that.
Yeah.
But we didn't know, we didn't have anything. We ate. I mean,
Yeah.
very rarely missed meals, but we had, you know, my brothers and my sisters. So, I mean, when I look back on it, yeah, there was a lot of negativity there, but I think when you're a kid, things happen to you and you don't really conceptualize like, oh, this is a bad situation or things are going bad because you really don't know what bad or good is because you're like 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that's where really, for me, I think it's this common story for military guys, especially military guys that I've met that didn't have a father in their life. Is like you kind of go around collecting fathers,
Mhm.
or like finding people to fill that void.
Mhm.
And I think the Uber father for me at that time, because I was a Christian and kind of in name only. So it was the military kind of became like, you know, the standard bearer or the judger
Yeah.
that told me where I was doing well or not doing well. And I worked really hard the early part of my military career to kind of live up to the ideals that the military had for me. So anyway.
When growing up, like, did you get into hunting growing up?
No, it was like a cultural thing I did a few times.
Sure, because in North Dakota,
Everybody hunts.
hunts, right? Yeah.
Yes. But out there, it's kind of not the type of hunting I'm into now. It's more like you'll get an ice shed and set it up near a field. It's like 20 below zero. There might
Yeah.
be some cut corn out there. You've got the 30-06.
Yeah.
There's football on.
He's bait.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's baiting it.
Yeah, out in the middle of the field.
You remember your first experience hunting and who was it with? Or
Shoot the deer. Yeah. So there was this guy who's a friend with my mom. His name was Guy.
Yeah.
And he was a hunter, and he kind of took me out the first time and like shot a doe. I was pretty much unimpressed with the whole entire thing and didn't
Yeah.
want to be there, and it was cold. My mom thought I should go with him.
Yeah.
So my first real hunting experience would have been with my brother-in-law when I was about 25 or maybe 26. I don't remember the exact age, where he got me a bow and up in a tree, and I loosed an arrow on an animal for the first time. And that's really when I was hooked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask, because I'm super passionate about this. So and I see this a lot, you know, whether it's because their father's not present because they're a poor father, or because they're not present because they passed away, or whatever the case may be. What do you feel? How do you feel like you were able to overcome? I mean, it's, you know, just like you said, I know you said military was kind of what you hooked onto. But up until that point, like, how does a boy without a father learn to become a man?
I mean, this is not the answer probably everybody wants to hear, but I really didn't learn. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes as a youth and got in a lot of trouble. And really, I say it now, and it's not a cliche. It's only by the grace of God that I'm here. I come from a family where I think I'm the only person that's not been to jail for an extended period of time, or dealt with drug addiction or alcoholism. My mother was an alcoholic. And some of my earliest memories are going to meetings with her. So, it really wasn't until I'd been in the military for like 6 years that I think I really conceptualized what it is to be a man and kind of put that into practice. And I wouldn't say I really got good at it until like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So sure, we'll get into that later too, where I really kind of did the thought experiment and understood what was going on and what I was doing in the world and why this place is exceptional. I would say that was where my path started to actually becoming a man. Up to that point, it was just kind of emulating people and what I thought was a man. So I had like a basketball, football coach that I kind of followed around. He actually let me live with him one summer. Took me to a bunch of basketball camps and stuff like that. My mother remarried a few times. The first guy was a rough experience, and then she divorced him. And then she ended up getting remarried later to a guy who's not my father. I don't even call him dad. My little brother does, but he's a good dude, a good man. He's still alive. My mom died a few years ago. And I still keep in regular contact with him. And that was kind of my first foray into manhood. But that wasn't really till I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
By then I'd left the military for 3 years. So, and I have no short answers. I apologize.
No, bro, this is great.
There's no time frame.
Yeah, there's no time frame on your life, bro.
But to answer your question, really, I think I modeled and copied and collected guys and tried to live up to them. But there's so much wrapped up to that. I didn't really get there till I was older.
This is why it's so important in community, right? Right. Like, no, I was going to say it's why it's so important for, I think, guys like us to realize in community, like so many people, like my dad didn't die, but he left when I was 6. And I remember sitting on the front porch swing with my mom, watching my dad leave and didn't see him for a few more years. And he's been in and out of my life my whole time. But same as me, like I grew up extremely, extremely poor and you know, hunting and fishing family. And most of what we grew up eating was caught or harvested. But I didn't really realize that was just normal life to me. I didn't think. I look back now and realize, but that was just normal life. But there was so many men along the way that either learned what I didn't want to be as a man. I looked, okay, I don't want to be that. Or like my grandfather, for example, was like, that's who I want to be. And so like just this collection of men through my life, like just having examples and modeling after. And so, I don't think we realize, or many people realize how many boys in this country right now grow up without fathers at home or have fathers in their home that are just absent, right? Non-present or absent. But how through community and being involved in the community, you could, a podcast or people going to hear your story in a podcast or through different being involved in the community, how we can impact our culture and communities, even if we don't get to raise these boys.
Yeah. That's why I love that answer. You're like, oh, I don't think this is a great answer. I think it's a great answer because I think people listening to this who maybe struggled with that throughout their life, it's like an affirmation of, man, like I have to be that man. I have to find a way to be that man if that man is gone. Because let's be honest, nobody should have to, right? No little boy or girl should have to go without a father. But if they do, they also can't become the victim of their circumstance, and they have to figure out how to lead their own life. And so I love the answer.
I don't think I realized that at the time, but I think it's worth noting as well as I would watch a lot of movies and read a lot of books. Mm-hmm. And then it always seemed I like male like movies where there's some guy doing the right thing no matter what. Like one of my favorite movies when I was a kid was like The Outlaw Josie Wales or the Terminator movies. And even though you might be like, that's not a father figure, but when you extract away when you look at the narrative and the sci-fi gets taken away, it's what it's about, really.
It's a protector, a leader, and a protector.
Yes, exactly. So those types of movies as well, and like Predator is the reason I joined the military. So all of those as well, I think, inform that.
Yeah, so man, as you say that, I think all through my teenage years, I read all the Vietnam soft books about the Third Force Recon Company and Men with Green Faces and all these books like as a teenager, and then I watched all those movies and stuff like that, and it was very much absent of a father to try to this is who I want to be, and I need models for that, and it's so important. I mean, one of the things you said was man, unfortunately, we say we don't want our young men to become a victim or choose a victim route, but most of them do. Most of them do. I mean, most of them. You can look at the statistics for fatherless homes for incarceration and stuff like that. Most of them,
drug abuse, incarceration, suicide rates—they're all through the roof.
It boils down to fatherless homes. So unfortunately, if we just want to be honest, most of the fatherless children, especially fatherless boys in this country, end up being a statistic over the victor.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if they hear a message like this soon enough, hopefully they can break that generational, struggle, because it becomes a generational struggle, because then they usually grow up and then they usually, abandon their family. Right. And so then it becomes a thing. So, but I appreciate that response, man. So you obviously you kind of latch on to the military as knowing there's something missing. You're trying to be a leader protector. So this guy walks into your high school and that's it.
Yeah. I saw the response to all the girls and I was like, well,
Yeah.
I could probably use that in my life. I actually thought when I went to the recruiting station, I thought first maybe I want to do a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Go that route. And then the guy was like, well, you have to here's what the swim test looks like and this type of stuff. I went and tried to swim in a pool and I was drowning. I was like, I'll go the Army route, I think, actually. Sounds a little better to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2000 is when you enlisted.
Yep.
How old were you?
17.
Also right out of high school. Same.
Yep.
Yeah. Same with me. Yeah. And then so, I mean, lots of jobs to pick from, especially in Army.
Yeah.
How'd you pick to be a intel analyst?
Again, it's not going to be the story everybody was going to want to hear.
I mean, you maybe just got stuck with it. The recruiter needed an intel analyst slot filled.
Well, no, I mean, I had scored really well on my ASVAB and all that type of stuff. And they gave me kind of the run of the mill on jobs. And
okay, I'm just curious. I want to pause there because I'm not, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not picturing you as a straight A student.
Not at all.
Okay.
No, barely passed.
Yeah. So same here. So I was failing high school, D's and F's, and yet I'll go take the ASVAB and I score really high in ASVAB.
Same
I
thing.
don't know how that happened. Yeah.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I also did really well on the language testing stuff as well, which kind of made sense though, because growing up, my mother and grandfather and my mom all used Icelandic in the house. My older brother was born in Iceland.
Yeah. Because eventually you go to DLI.
Yep. Yes.
The Defense Language Institute for those that don't.
Yep. Exactly. And the biggest bonus was MP. They needed MPs at the time, military policemen.
Yeah.
And being a 17-year-old that thought a badge and money sounded cool.
Yeah.
And a gun.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I want to do that job. Being an idiot, 17-year-old, I left my driver's license at home. So when I went to the MEP station to sign up, the recruiter, who must have been oh, this guy's a real bonehead. But at North Dakota, where I was from, they only went to do the actual MEPS process and properly enlist you and sign all the documents online that you get on a bus the next morning. I think they did that once a quarter at that time because it was a 4-hour drive from where I lived to the actual recruiting battalion where that processing happened. So they only did it. It was either once a quarter or once a month. And I think it was once a quarter. But I'd forgotten my driver's license and they needed the driver's license for the AIT packet, the Advanced Individual Training packet. So when you go through basic, you finish basic and then you go to your job. For people listening, obviously you guys know what I'm talking about, but for people listening, you get your job after you complete basic is what we in the Army call AIT.
Advanced Individual Training.
Yep. So to become an actual MP, they needed a driver's license for the packet. And I was like, I don't have it somewhere at my house. I think I might have even lost it.
Yeah.
But I didn't have it. And he's like, well, we can't sign you up for MP. And I was like, okay, well, what's going to keep me on that bus tomorrow morning getting out of here? Because if I go back, I had said bye to everybody. I had a girlfriend at the time that I, sorry, I'm leaving. I was not going to go back to that trailer home. I didn't care if I actually had a thought to myself, I'll hitchhike to Minneapolis if I have to. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So what do I have to do to get out of here still? And he's like, well, we've got to pick a job where there's no requirement for you to submit a driver's license. So he said, well, you did really high on the ASVAB. You had a good GT score on your ASVAB. There's an intel job, but we got to take you to a skiff where there's some E7 who's going to start in first class. He's going to brief you up on what the jobs are and the intel stuff. And so I went to this room and the guy came in there and he's like, you can't tell anybody about this. It was kind of weird. I didn't realize, thinking about it even now.
So for those listening, a SCIF is a secure compartmentalized information.
Yeah.
Facility.
Sorry. Yeah.
So that's a place where someone could legally share classified information.
Yeah. And I don't even think what they're sharing with me is classified, but just the nature of what job positions were opened and that type of stuff. So I started hearing the James Bond music instantly. And I was,
good thing you lost your driver's license.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so
I would not want to be an MP.
You're right. Exactly. You can't imagine how many times I actually was on a podcast the other day with some very good friends of mine where I said, there are these moments in your life where if things had gone any other way, the total trajectory of your life would be changed.
It's called God's providence.
And that's exactly what we talked about. And I have a way of conceptualizing that we can get into later. But it was one of those things where I actually get anxious when I think about it enough, where I'm like, it could have gone that way.
Yeah.
And what, like, I would hate nothing against MPs. I have nothing against MPs. It's an essential function in the military.
Yeah. But
like, hey, you're doing 28 and a 25. I'm going to make your weekend suck.
Yeah.
My brother in arms.
Yeah.
Right. Like that would be the job for the most part. Yeah. Of course, there's other stuff to do and you could go the CID route or whatever, but I wouldn't have gotten there and I would have failed as an MP. So I heard the James Bond music. I picked the first job and, got out that next morning and took off.
If you're watching and wondering what I'm holding here, this beautiful piece of equipment, this is the Smith & Wesson Volunteer. It's one of my favorite firearms from Smith & Wesson. And I am a proud ambassador of Smith & Wesson firearms. I have been a lifelong fan of Smith & Wesson. They are one of the most iconic American companies, have been around for 170 years, making the best firearms, Second Amendment focused. And I love the people there. This from the CEO to the vice president that have become personal friends of mine. They are supporters of our military and first responder communities. In fact, they are supporters of Mighty Oaks, which makes them the premier sponsor of this show. And if you are in the market for one of the best firearms out there, then whether it's a rifle, a pistol, for whatever reason, for hunting, for self-defense, you need to get yourself a Smith & Wesson. You can't go wrong with Smith & Wesson. The quality, the craftsmanship, and the company itself is no way you go wrong. So check out Smith & Wesson and get yourself one of the most iconic American firearms you get your hands on. Smith & Wesson, my go-to, and a proud supporter of Mighty Oaks and our military and first responder communities. All right, guys, I want to thank one of our show sponsors. By the way, all the sponsors for Resilience are supporters of Mighty Oaks for our military and first responder communities. No better one than Gators. Gators has been serving the military and first responder communities with the most incredible American-made eyewear for 35 years. Lifetime frames. Before I got involved with them professionally, I wore Gators all over the world through military operations. The ballistic lenses are something I really believe in. The aluminum frames, just the clarity of the lenses, their polarization. I wore them for skydiving because they have a polarized lens that allows you to see digital screens. And so for skydiving, shooting, you name it, all the crazy activities I do, I wore Gators. And then now I'm blessed to be in a relationship with them. And they're an amazing partner for Mighty Oaks. The best eyewear out there. Again, lifetime frame, American made, 35 years of service to our military and first responder communities. There is no better eyewear out there than Gators, and they look super cool. So I love mine, and get yourself some. So you do basic training, you go to Intel Analyst School.
Yep.
Right.
And so, I went to basic training, and September 11th happened while I was in basic training. Which was pretty nuts.
Explain what that's like. When September 11th happened, I'm a sergeant.
I was at the range, certifying like basic qualification. So we were, I think, a week from graduating.
Right.
And I'll never forget his name, and maybe he'll listen to this show. I have not talked to the guy since. He was just the guy who told me September 11th was happening. His name is Orta, O-R-T-A.
Orta.
Yeah, and he was grabbing ammo cans from the truck, and he's like, "Hey, dude, I just heard and he said some crazy stuff. Like it wasn't exactly this, but it was like planes were flown into the World Trade Center, planes were flown into like the Eiffel Tower or the White House, and like pandemonium was taking place." And my recruiter had told me that something like this would go down in basic training. He was like, "They're going to tell you like Bosnia is flaring up, and they're going to take volunteers or so and so, blah 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 blah." So I just didn't believe it. I was like, this is just misinformation. This is training. They're going to ask for the people who want to go and fight in Afghanistan, and whoever doesn't volunteer is going to get the smoke pit. Yeah. That's what I thought.
Right.
So I just went right back to the range, kept firing. No word, but I could tell that there was a shift in the way the drill sergeants were acting and everyone else. There was just like this chaos that had, would kind of overlay the situation. And they ended up telling us the next day. The battalion commander told us, And then it was craziness there too, like people hurting themselves or saying they want to leave. No longer the Army looked appealing.
Some people got scared, right?
Yeah, I got scared. Anyway, I ended up graduating the next week from basic training. We ended up having to do gate guard like half days. Graduated from basic training, went to AIT. AIT was out in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which is like, right down on the border. Did the intel school, and got my first assignment in Germany after that.
Did you deploy at all as enlisted?
Yeah, I did 2 tours to Iraq, right in the very beginning of the war, and went and did the Saddam International stuff. Liberated that and didn't really do anything. I was a S1 admin guy for most of that time. Not like nothing cool really going on there. Yeah. Although I had a clearance. So there were some team guys, and I don't know if they were what they were, but they would give me like the manila envelopes full of classified information. And I go walk it to their little area. Yeah. And I was like, all the guys were there in like sunglasses and stuff. That was the coolest thing I did during the first part of the war. First part of the war was I was the one guy in the admin shop who had a clearance. So we were trying to, I don't know what 3 or 4 times I had to walk these guys who were all wearing like gaiters and rolled up sleeves and hands in their pockets.
Flip flops and
some classified stuff, and then go back. And that was about that. And then I went again as an enlisted guy one more time in 2006 to do like the first instantiation of like this global intel effort thing. Again, it was kind of more the green or conventional Army deployments. And then that was my last kind of like foray. And then what I guess you could call the normal Army, like it was anything but normal after that. But
so what was the shift? Did the shift happen on the enlisted side or
right when I was a W1.
Okay.
So I got.
So you decided you want to be an officer, warrant officer.
Yeah, warrant officer. I decided I want to be a warrant officer. My first person that kind of mentored me when I joined the military was a warrant officer. I thought he was the coolest guy in the world.
Yeah.
His name was Collins. He was like a W2, and like no one touched him.
Well, so just for the listeners, I mean, I sometimes always make assumptions everyone knows what a warrant officer is. Right. So you have enlisted, you have officers. Explain to everybody what a warrant officer, because even Sean asked me earlier.
Explain.
Yeah. So I always use the analogy of like a school. Mm-hmm. Your soldiers are your students. Mm-hmm. And this isn't meant to sound derogatory, but like E1 through E4s are like your students. They're learning. They're doing most of the work. They're the focus of everything because they're really they're going to do the fighting. Then you have your NCOs who are kind of like your teachers, non-commissioned officers. So you're E5 to like E9, and they're like the teachers and in the Army, we call them the backbone of the Army. And then from there you have officers, which are like your colonels and your majors and your captains. And I look at them as like the administrators, principal, the school board, that type of stuff. And then your warrant officers, I always say, are like the guys who are choosing the curriculum, what's going to be taught, what equipment are we going to use, basically the technical experts of the military unit. But they're in this analogy, they'd be the person who's determining the curriculum for the school, what's going to be taught, how's it going to be taught, what basketballs are we using, all of the equipment, all of that type of stuff are your warrant officers. That's, I think, the best way for someone who's never served to think about it. But the easiest way to say it is just the technical experts of a military unit. And they've kind of got this weird thing where most people have never heard of them. They very rarely see them. They almost are never in PT formation, so they got this kind of like unicorn status in the military, and the higher up they go, the more unicorny they get. And so that's, I guess, the best way. I don't know if you have anything you'd want to add to that.
No, I kind of see it the same way. They're like the SME, the subject matter expert of that particular job field.
Yep, exactly.
So that's kind of how I've always looked at the warrant officers, and definitely, in most jobs, not every job, in most jobs, the officer side, the traditional officer side, or the administrators.
Yep, exactly.
And so you choose to be a warrant officer. You go to warrant officer school, but you stay in the same field, in the intelligence field, and you become say the title again.
The signals analyst. I mean, the easiest way to say it is just technical signals analyst, I guess would be the easiest way to say it, to not bring out that laborious.
Which you said is like a nerdy job. To me, it's like a super cool job.
I always saw myself as the nerd.
Yeah, I think SIGINT is like just from my side, but as operators side of special operations, like I've always had huge admiration for SIGINT guys.
Yeah, for me, it's always been the opposite. Yeah. I've always had huge for the operators and for the people that are being supported. And actually, I know how dumb I am. So whenever I'm building something for someone to use, I'm like going to double, triple, quadruple check it and be like, here you go. And then someone like you will go out and actually employ the kit, because there's like traditional SIGINT, which would be like the collection side. And there's the NSA, the Army, the CIA all have collection missions.
Sure.
For different reasons. And signals intelligence is just one facet of that. You have imagery intelligence, you have signals intelligence, you have MASINT, you have comment, you have all of these different intelligence disciplines. And when you become a warrant officer, you kind of have to learn about all of them. And so I was a staff sergeant when I became a warrant officer. And so I went to warrant officer school, which is like going back to basic training again, just get treated like the difference. I would say people always ask me, especially when I was recommending guys to go or girls to go and become warrant officers, they're like, well, what's it like? And I'm like, remember when you went to basic training and the drill sergeant would go tell you to march around in a field for a while, like a bunch of idiots for whatever reason. And you'd think there was some Mr. Miyagi thing behind it. Like, take this seriously. We're out here in the field. The same thing will happen in warrant officer school. It's just now it's because they didn't have something planned. There's nothing Mr. Miyagi behind it. Yeah. So just get used to being told you're an idiot for 8 weeks, go through it, get done out the other side, and then you go and learn the more technical parts of it. And warrant officer was the best choice I ever made in the military. It was like the perfect thing for me. So I went and went to like a tactical SIGINT unit right after I came out. I was a platoon leader for 2 years. And then from platoon leader, which usually is reserved for lieutenants. Yep. But because it was an intel unit and it was a highly technical intel unit, they had W1s. We call them wobbly ones, where there's myself and another guy named Romero. Mm-hmm. We're the two platoon leaders in this company. There were only 2 platoons in it. And that was a great time. Like sure. I'd been a squad leader. I'd been a platoon sergeant, and the last thing I thought was going to happen when I became a warrant officer is now I'm a platoon leader. Yeah. But that's the first job I got thrown into. So as a platoon leader, we deployed and did some cool stuff. You could call it like signals intelligence support on the ground, pointing out doors. We wouldn't be in the stack, but we'd be pointing the stack at the door, saying bad guy X is in there. And I also did that same thing as an enlisted guy, but now I was on the other side of it. Did that and then I'm getting ahead of myself, cross-trained into the other things we'll talk about later, whether it was cyber, human intelligence, and some of the other intelligence disciplines.
So because I'm so fascinated with SIGINT and how, the SIGINT guys help get operators on target, I don't know what you can and can't say. So
sure. I don't either, but I'll do my best.
but I'd love to give a scenario that you've seen in combat to where you could say, like, we use this technology to get operators to a door and a bad guy's behind that door, and we go in and the operators go in and capture and kill them. Is there any kind of scenario?
Yeah, sure.
Like what kind of technology allows us to do that? I mean, I know, like, for me, we've got guys like you that give us listening platforms. We put listening platforms out on targets. We've been able to identify where not just a bad guy, like this particular bad guy, that bad guy, like this guy's like, number 15 on a list. Like, yep. This guy is right here in this house. Like,
yeah. So I'll use an analogy again, or not an analogy. I'll just say people can use their imaginations as they listen to me. Yeah. And then I'm not crossing any lines. Yeah. You could think, there's a bad guy walkie-talkie network, out somewhere in the middle. What my job would be first deploying into country. If there's not anyone in country, then you're building it from the ground up. If someone's in country, you're doing a RIP. But basically it's, what is the bad guy walkie-talkie network? How are they communicating? What are their techniques, tactics, procedures surrounding how and when they communicate? What are their call signs? What are they doing? You establish that kind of intelligence. You do what's called IPB, intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And you do that based on, what's the JPL list when you get in a country? Who are we trying to kill? What's the rank and order list of bad guys that we're trying to get after? You get that from the commander. The commander, specifies that, and then you build that intelligence framework through various collection methods. So in this case, you could just buy another walkie-talkie that works in that frequency range, and now you got a group of guys who are listening to that walkie-talkie who speak the language, and they're saying, we think bad guy so-and-so is over here, or he's self-identified and this is what his voice sounds like. And you got terps or people speak the language themselves. And you build that intelligence framework, and you're feeding the battlefield commander that intelligence framework. And I'm strictly speaking to the signals intelligence side of this right now, but and then a decision comes where, there's going to be an interdiction, or there's going to be an operation, or you might say, if I'm going after bad guy X, we might call him objective so-and-so, come up with whatever your goofy name is. That it seems like they were always goofy names. So you could say like objective silver coin, and say, okay, well, silver coin came up on his walkie-talkie and he was in this area. So I'm going to throw my walkie-talkie into an airplane. I'm going to go fly over that area. I'm going to find out exactly where he is, or verify through other sources of intelligence that he's there, and work with the other guys. And then, brief a team, an ODA, or an infantry team, or whomever that's going to go and do the operation. All of the intelligence and what everything is coming to place. And all of that process gets, I'm really simplifying this, by the way, but all of that gets approved by the battlefield commander who's got the con. And then the operation is launched. They go and kill bad guy X, and then I'll go in afterwards and pick up all the walkie-talkies and the computers, and do, at that point in the war early on, we called it sensitive site exploitation, which was basically, what are the pieces of intelligence that I can gather? Like, even if you guys were to leave this place, get your computer and get his phone and get that camera over there, and what's all of the data that's on these devices that allow me to launch a new targeting effort in order to, again, reacting based on the priority intelligence requirements of the commander, start painting that new picture. And then I'll do a triage and say, well, on this computer, he sent an email to his wife saying that he's going to be in this area because there's going to be a VBID, or there's going to be a vehicle-borne IED, and that, so-and-so is going to launch it at this place. So that would be like, you'd triage that right to the top, get that commander to either prevent it or to, stop it, to conduct that triage. And then there'll be longer pieces of stuff that you want to do analysis on. Maybe there was a camera that had some photos that had intelligence value. And now you're trying to figure out, well, where was that phone, or where was that camera when they took that picture? What's in the background? Send it off to someone like NGIC. And, well, we think it was taken in Peshawar, and we think it was X, Y, and Z, and blah, 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 blah. And here's where that camera was available to be bought. And here's places in that area where it could have been bought. And then you do that strategic pattern of life as well. And that's just one aspect of it. But yeah, all of that. And as we were, during the height of the war, or, whether it was Ramadi in 06 or 07, or I was back in Tikrit in 08, 09. There were sometimes it was 5-6 times a week we were doing that, and they were rolling. Sure. So it was always busy.
It's just like, like the triangulation of signals, right?
Yep, exactly.
Like you try to signal, like, okay, this guy's consistently, like every night at this time, he's sending something out, and they're triangulating, and they're like, he's in this house at this time every single day. Yep.
And people hear about, I actually had a guy talk to me about like triangulation of signals, and he was like, oh, you were talking about that on a podcast. You'd be really be talking about that. And I'm like, dolphins triangulate.
Yeah, that's
everything.
That's pretty open
triangulates.
Source, yeah.
You're right. Yeah. So I mean, if you hear if you have two guys listening to one sound and they both shoot an azimuth at the sound, you've done resection, and you know where the sound's coming from.
It's like intersections and resections.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I said, not too complex of information.
Yeah, and so that's what we would do with the airplanes, and then I'd also get up in that airplane and build things like GRGs, ground reference guides, to make sure if the infrastructure was very dynamic in Iraq, so there might be new power lines, or there might no longer be power lines, or there might be the vehicle has changed, or the house has changed. How many people are in that house? Did you see them carrying any guns? What guns were they carrying? Like, so the guys on the ground who are actually going to go do the operation have a sense of what they're about to step into. All of that stuff we would do, and try to buy down variable. When you break it down at the highest level, it's variable analysis and accounting for risk.
Yeah. And that's why guys like me love guys like you, because that, we don't know how to do that. Right?
Yeah. I always just
the big picture work together so well, because you get so many different technical, it is just one of them, right? So many different technical expertise coming together for one common goal. And that's to, make America safe and defend people around the world that can't defend themselves, and hunt down and capture and kill bad guys. It's awesome.
And for me, always, how do I get attached on the con op? How do I get attached? I want to be on the operation. So I'd always be asking these guys, like, you guys got room in the Humvee I'll come with afterwards? I can go grab this stuff. Because you get like a sack full of phones from like an ODA guy or from a team, somebody, and you'd be like, well, where was this phone at? Whose body was this on? Like, where was it? Like, you're always trying, because that's intelligence, right? It's like, I don't know, dude. And we figured out, nerd.
Yeah, the guys, they don't care. They're like,
so, you know, anytime I could sell people on the value of the mission, which is really something I think I'm not the smartest guy. I'm certainly not the most driven guy, but what I felt like I was always good at was finding those people and then giving them motivation and then relaying their capabilities to the commander and to the team guy. So I could say, hey, look, I know you don't have a lot of room in that Humvee tonight when you're heading there, but here's what I can get you from an intelligence perspective if you allow one of my guys or myself to come with you.
Right.
So relaying the importance of that and making it palatable for a team guy or whomever else. This is why you need us with you on the X.
Right.
I was good. That was what I was good at.
Well, yeah, after assault's done, the bad guy, the target's either captured or killed. And then it's just like a check in the box, like gather all electronics, like, and it's like satchels, like throwing computers, hard drives, phones. None of the guys care about that stuff.
Yeah. So on the really high priority stuff that I worked on, especially once I was kind of on the other side, more in the special operations realm, it became more important. Like if it was just a team of guys who were facilitating whatever, logistics or something, and everyone's dead, like maybe there was intel there, but it wasn't something where I needed a double E that spoke 3 languages in the room collecting stuff. But on the real like tier 1 stuff, or like, you know, if this is a top 10 guy or something like that, then I was like, hey, sir, we need those dudes in the room because stuff will get overlooked. Context is needed. So it's better if we can just get one of these guys with. So
for sure, because those are typically in non-permissive areas. So as soon as that you kill the guy, like now they know we're here. The clock's ticking. We need to get off target. Like quick, and some things are happening fast. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
And you also need those guys trained. And they need to be force multipliers. Like they need to know how to, you know, shoot a rifle. They need to, they need to have, they need at least, so that way they're not a liability for the team while they're there.
Right. So you do this, by the way, for those of us, I said it when I introduced you, but you retired. You did this. You did multiple tours, Iraq,
21 years.
Afghanistan. Yeah. So do you have any operations that stand out, like as, you know, like kind of your Super Bowl of your career?
There's a few of them. I guess the one that I was most proud of, and it kind of served as a culminating event in my career because I had to basically leverage everything that I had learned. Like I did some cooler stuff earlier on, you know, trying to find Zarqawi. I was involved with the intelligence part of that. But ultimately none of what I did really ended in him being killed. But so there were those little cool things where we were really trying to get after.
He's the EMP.
Yes.
Guy. So Zarqawi was the guy that responsible for killing so many of our service members with the EMPs. And
Al Zarqawi, really bad dude. So, you know, I touched a lot of that stuff throughout, but later in my career, and I'll just kind of stay general again. We talked about it before because I'm not exactly sure all I can talk about.
They say EMP.
It wasn't EMP. It was
I said it wrong.
IEDs.
But it was he hit that certain one that would it was that shape charge.
Oh yeah. Now I know what you're talking. Yeah. And there was a reason, the MRAP stuff. There's one of the reasons why they redesigned the MRAP is because of the way they were doing those charges. That's right. Not EMP. It was it was the specialized IEDs. I remember what you're talking about now.
I can't remember exactly.
I'd totally forgotten about that. I hadn't talked about that in like 10 years.
He's the culprit behind that.
Yes. And he was a bad dude. And Osama bin Laden called him the Prince of Al Qaeda in Iraq. Yeah. And he was in charge. He was, I think, a really well-read guy and super dangerous and killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And he was also in videos cutting heads off of dudes. And I think he did did he do Daniel, the reporter?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember
if it was him or not, but
anyway.
I remember,
anyway, my service. So I went to work on a task force out in Afghanistan. And this particular task force had a lot of moving parts. And the commander that I worked for was the guy that brought me in. He knew me and trusted me a lot, and I'd worked with him in the past. And when you're in the special operations community, which I was a detailee to them, I wasn't actually part of the task force. I got recruited in by this commander who was now in charge of it that I had worked with him in the past. I actually worked with him while I was out in the Philippines. A lot of people don't know it, but in the southern Philippines, for Special Forces Group and a lot of Marines, 3rd Radio Battalion I deployed with out there, had been doing counter terrorism down on a Holo Island. So I went out there a couple of times. And anyway, I worked with a guy out there who actually ended up, and I won't say his name, but he ended up recruiting me into this thing in Afghanistan later. And, throughout my military career, I was trained in human intelligence. I was trained in cyber. I was trained in signals intelligence. I've went to, I think, every SEER school that the military offers, along with some other 3-letter organizations that have their own, along with like out in Spokane, there's the, all of those.
The high risk.
And then high risk officers course.
It's so good.
Yeah. And then the high risk officers course was awesome too. I did that out on the East, and I did the loan operator stuff. And I got to use all of that. Mm-hmm. So during this operation, we were trying to shut down a large media production. Think of like, you guys remember like the Inspire magazines, mm-hmm. where there's, I think there's, what were they called? The Zarnoff brothers, the guys who exploded the pressure cookers in Boston.
Yeah.
I believe they learned some of that from those magazines.
Yeah.
But what the magazines were really for is training people overseas and new ways to make IEDs and that type of stuff. But they were really like glossy, well-produced media. Like it was really well done. But they were also filming videos, and it was a large network. And I got to use, and because the task force commander at the time trusted me, he basically said, "Hey, Chief, you're running the intel. Like the 2 is you. So just whatever you need, whatever you want, blank check. Like let's just go kill these guys." I got to do
the guys putting this media out.
The guys that were,
so the people listening, like this is, like terrorism 101. They're going to produce, they're going to build sympathy amongst their cause.
Yep.
And they're going to radicalize people. And then they're not only going to radicalize them, but they empower them by training them. And they don't need to actually control cells or whatever. They could just know that they're going to go out and commit acts of terrorism.
And they'll make lone wolves.
Yeah.
And it's really like,
so it's so important.
Decentralized.
Decentralized terrorism without creating cells. They just lone wolf operators and
and doing it through the internet and media sites. So, I mean, I got to use portions of the ethical hacking stuff. I got to work with great organizations back home where I knew what the capabilities were or how we could shut down the way they were distributing some of the stuff online. But we also got to use that to find out where they were doing things. I got to use the human intelligence portion. Can't get into it a ton, but basically these networks were fed logistically, and identifying where those how they were fed logistically, and then dealing with those guys in ways that I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I got to do that work, and then the media exploitation piece, and the pre and post and how we fed all of that, and then the signals intelligence piece. I had guys that were in my shop that were doing the ground stuff, they were doing the air stuff and flying, they're doing the intelligence collection. And really, I just got it's a great feeling when you have someone who at that level, he was a full bird, who just says, "I know you're capable. Just go and get after it and do whatever you can, and let's just get this done."
It's so empowering, right?
Yeah, it's super empowering.
Yeah.
And so I was the approval authority on most of this stuff. So I asked for airplanes, I got airplanes. I asked for money to do X, Y, and Z, or I had to fly here to meet with these people, like just total autonomy. And we, really painted an awesome intelligence framework, and it resulted in us, a large team of really bad dudes going. And first they did from the air. There was basically a bombing campaign. JSOC guys went in there afterwards, obliterated the place. Then I went in there, did my thing from the sensitive site exploitation piece, getting the media, taking stuff back, and launching like 3 or 4 more, and found 3 or 4 more of these organizations that we didn't even know about, other places that have been working just through what we got from the objective. I actually did another thing just like it in Afghanistan 2 years later in 2015, where I was mostly just doing the sensitive site exploitation, but just, you're really knocking out the slats or the bottom of these organizations when you get rid of cells like that.
Yeah.
And that's really a force multiplier whenever you can take out those types of things for all the reasons that you talked about before. And ultimately, these were bad dudes, and they were doing bad things, and it was killing people here and at home. Yeah. So that was kind of my swan song.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
I love that because, like I said, most people would think of, when you think of bad guys, you think of, the guys with AK-47s and RPGs, like, or the guys strapping bombs to themselves. But man, a guy producing propaganda and radicalizing people around the world and creating those lone wolf scenarios. Those are the most dangerous people.
Yeah, it was kind of, to me, he was kind of like the Ayman al-Zawahiri of media production.
Yeah.
Like he was highly credentialed, highly educated, and was very effective at what he did. And when you looked at the magazines and the media and the stuff that they made, like there'd be like cartoons on radicalizing kids that look really good.
Yeah.
Think about like it was distributing media for like Sunday school terrorism. Like starting them young all the way up.
They have a long game, right? They're not just like right now. They need to start this person now. And I mean, it's in most Americans and even American military, sadly, we kind of focus on what's right in front of us. But
they were definitely playing the long game at this place. A lot of the material there was aimed at young children and then aimed at parents to educate their young children, like how to enable the parents to help them do it. And then they even had ones where there was no writing inside. Yeah. Because most of the people weren't literate that were looking at this. So it was like really well drawn out. It was insane. It was insane.
And you won't say it, and I won't say it for you to put you on the spot, but just so you guys know that the task force that Bill got allocated to do this is like the top tier operations. This is like, tip of the spear, going after the worst guys in the world and with the most resources and assets to shut these guys down. And man, I love hearing stories like that. And post my time.
Yeah,
and this was
and it was, like I said, my swan song, and I was really happy. Like I just such a sense of completion from it. And I really liked the work out in Afghanistan, and I thought that was really the right place for us to be in the right time, and it was great.
How'd the Afghan withdrawal affect you?
Frustration, I guess, would be the best way to sum it up. Just
you had a lot invested there.
Yeah, a lot of time, a lot invested, but also I think about telling people when you're going to do something and on the timeline you're going to do it and how you're going to neuter yourself while you're doing it. Just to me is like the worst form of leadership. I watch this. I'm a real nerd when it comes to politics, and not even politics, maybe like the thought that goes underneath politics. I like to watch old Firing Lines. I don't know if you've ever watched like Firing Line with Bill Buckley.
No, I haven't seen it.
No, they're just these old, it's like PBS political commentary from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, okay.
Where he'll have someone on. Well, anyway, he had Reagan on, and he was asking Reagan about, the use of nuclear weapons and that type of thing. And essentially what Reagan said was, no, I probably wouldn't have used nukes in Vietnam, but I would have had the enemy going to sleep every night worrying that I was going to use nukes in Vietnam.
Right.
And so when I hear people, whether it was the red line in Syria or Afghanistan, like we're coming out on this date.
Yeah.
So then the terrorists, the bad guys are just going to be like, okay, then we're sitting still until that date.
Yeah.
And then, oh, wait, you're going to leave us all of your kit? All of the gear is going to be here? They didn't have night vision goggles. We owned the night. Yeah. Like that was our thing. We were in country, we own the night, you get in the country and you're doing operations that night because we could see and they couldn't. Yeah. That was a big time tactical advantage that we lost. There were tons of nods that were left behind.
What's still illegal? Like this ITARS was called ITARS. Like I can't travel with a pair of white phosphorus night vision goggles to go do Operation Ukraine.
Right.
Because that's that controlled. It's that one pair of night vision goggles that ended up in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
We left $80 billion worth of equipment there.
Yeah. And all of that stuff just immediately, that they're going to go and take, like anybody who picked it up at first basically knew that they were a holding repository until someone would show up from some terrorist organization somewhere saying, hey, that's ours now.
Or China.
Yeah. And exploit all of that. Yeah. And because that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Like I know what they would do with this stuff because I know what I would do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, just monetarily, awful. Operationally, strategic, and planning wise, awful.
Yeah.
But then knowing how much we empowered our enemies as a result of that, look, we can't get into it today. It's not the place for it. It just made me mostly anti-government. Like government just needs to shrink.
Yeah.
Because these people, they're not interested. They, as you talked about before, they're in it for the short game. It's for them. It's just about their optic and I dealt with for the last 4 years of my military career. After that operation we just talked about, I got promoted to CW4. and I became an advisor first to a full bird and then to a 2-star general. And for the most of that time, I had to deal with the politics of the military. And I would I would either work with the staffs of representatives or senators every once in a while, or I'd be briefing their staffs. Or the general that I worked for would be going in and briefing them on like what kind of resources he needs, money, what the missions are, and all of that stuff. The only optic that they examine life through is the next election.
Right.
It's just like, what do I have to do to tell my constituents I checked the box? Like, if there's a greater good, that might mean I'm not getting reelected. They won't do it. So my thing that frustrates me.
2-star or higher in the military gets sucked into that.
Yes, absolutely. I think even colonels now these days are getting sucked into it. And
which the military, by the way, and everybody should know this, is apolitical. It should be. It should be.
Yeah,
including the Joint Chiefs.
Yes, exactly. And so, that's why them and the judges don't clap at the State of the Union, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, but it's actually the opposite of that. And at that, I should say this was my experience. It's not ubiquitous. I haven't been everywhere. I don't like speaking in like, this is absolutely how things happen everywhere. This was my experience. And it was such for me that my biggest fear for the last 4 years in the military was because almost, and there's nothing against my brothers that I served with, but almost 99% of the guys that did the jobs that I did or people that I worked with on a daily basis in the military were retiring and taking a big fat contractor gig. Or like I myself and another buddy of mine had gotten recruited by a big bank that was trying to do like red cell stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I got talked to by a bank like, hey, we don't want our infrastructure getting messed up. You've got skills from the military on messing up infrastructures. Come tell us how you would mess up our bank. One of my buddies went and did it. I didn't do it. He started at like $300K a year. And he was also dealing with government organizations while he was doing that because it was a really large bank. I ran from the contractor gig and that type of stuff so hard because I didn't want to be part of that. I'm sure there's great contractors and great organizations and all of that stuff, but like that 3 or 4 years there where like the competent guy was the last guy to be listened to in the room with these things. And again, it's just my experience, but I just knew I couldn't be a contractor. I knew I couldn't. One thing I had to watch was like, I'd work with dudes who were not so smart. And then the contractor who's trying to sell them the next piece of kit would come in the room and tell them they're the smartest guy in the world. I just wouldn't be able to do that. Like, and it's not because I'm moral or better than anyone else. I just have a big mouth and it wouldn't have worked for me, but also I would have been fired for like EO or something in the first year, like, hey, chief, you can't tell people they're idiots in meetings. And it's like, well, if we're expending taxpayer dollars and people had to work for this money and you have an idiot selling or spending it, we should probably tell him he's an idiot and then start over because people are sweating and dying for that money. And if they don't pay that money, we will send men with guns to go and extract that money from them. And if they don't have it, we will put them in jail and sell their property.
Yeah.
So maybe we should be doing the best by the taxpayer when these aren't just expenditures. This is all we have is time. And these people are using their time to pay these taxes so that we can go and do this stuff. So maybe we should do it so right now I'm fired.
Yeah.
I know that I'd be fired.
Yeah. But what a concept.
Right.
It is the one of the fundamental problems right now in our country, and but patriots like you see it, are speaking up, and I think more people need to speak up on this type of thing. With the man, all these deployments, all this experience you have, those are a lot of like the stress. I don't think people grab the stress that comes from a job like you did. Did that ever take a toll on you? We talk about like PTSD and anxiety and depression and veteran suicide, alcoholism. It seems like you got, you seem like you're in a pretty stable place. Did you ever deal with any of those things?
Yeah, probably not in the ways that people think it's not conventionally, at least.
Yeah.
I've had problems with alcohol in the past, not where I'm like, drinking way too much or I should say during COVID, I was drinking too much. I was at home. Couldn't leave the house. My wife has cystic fibrosis. I did not want her to be patient zero for what COVID looked like in a person with cystic fibrosis. For the first 6 months, we stayed in the house. And I was trying to read as much peer review. I always read the science. Anytime there's a hotbed issue, I will go on PLOS One, like the public library science. I'll read published papers and I'll say, what is the truth about what's going on? There was no science on what COVID did to a person with cystic fibrosis. And I love my wife enough to know I did not need her to be patient zero.
Yeah.
So I knew N95 masks were going to be a problem. The moment I heard the government say don't worry about N95 masks or masks at all. Like they put out a campaign. And I don't remember if you guys know if you guys remember this, but for about 2 weeks right at the beginning, they said, don't worry about N95 masks. Yeah. And I thought that's the first thing we need to worry about.
Yeah.
So I went and ordered a bunch, and I ordered so many that I could give them to friends and family I was worried about my wife. So, and I'm ashamed of this point in my life, but I overcorrected there because I was worried about my wife. So I got the N95 masks. I like cleaned everything we were bringing into the house. I just did not want to see her be the first one to fall.
Course, yeah.
And then once the signs started coming out, and then there were I ran towards the vaccination with her, and it's also another regret. And I think she regrets it too, but we got vaccinated almost as soon as you could, like in that May of that or March of that year or whatever.
You didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have though. But we went and but during that time, I knew I didn't like what was going on. And I was at night drinking a lot more than I should have been.
Yeah.
I was also working on Spartan Forge and getting ready to retire from the military. So my thing was like, work my regular military job, go and get groceries, come home, work on Spartan Forge from like 8 to 1 a.m. And I'd have a bottle of whiskey or some beers or something the whole time I was working at night. Then I get like 4 hours of sleep, wake up, rinse and repeat. I was like 264 pounds by the end of COVID. And I'm like 225 right now, but I was like 40 pounds overweight and I was just like in this haze. So I've had those types of problems while I was in the military too. It's just because I was always either operational or running or gunning or whatever. I didn't have time to really sit in front of a computer and drink all day. So it didn't have its effect on me, but I definitely knew I was drinking at the time more than I probably should have been. But the way that it really affected me was, or like the small team environment and deploying and going doing those things is, I have a really addictive personality. When I get into something, I have to realize it to its lowest level so I can understand how the system works. Like if something is some way, how did it get there? That generally means you need to read 15 books in order to understand what is the underpinning of this particular system you're trying to pull apart. And I did that with COVID. I did it with the US. I did it with Western thought. And at this time in the military, when I was playing operations for guys like you, triple checking, double checking, is this the right SDR? Did I pick this out right? Is this where the car drop off should be? Did I plan and overplan these things? I just wasn't sleeping. And for me, it wasn't even like my butt who was on the line. It was other people's butts who were on the line. So I just
appreciate it.
I know that I overdid it, and I was hard on people. And I was also hard on my family when I'd come home in some of the same ways. But it never created huge problems for me. I started going to counseling in like 2017. I started just seeing a therapist just so I could talk about these things because I knew that I was too high strung.
Yeah.
But I've gotten, I wasn't bad, but I could see I was in the place where I was getting bad.
Yeah.
Like I was on the tangent of getting bad. So I started doing therapy in like 2017 at recommendation of my wife. And then still doing it, as often as I can today. And that kind of helped me.
I was going to ask what kind of drug you to your norm of now.
I'm sorry?
I was going to ask what kind of led you to your norm right now.
My wife, therapy, and the Lord.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot on Mighty Oaks.
Yeah.
I think, we get into this as high performers, whether you're an operator or an intelligence guy or, in my case, a SWAT officer or whatever it is, you're a professional athlete, right? Like get in these super high performing stages of life. And that's all you do is go. And so that's all you can think to do is go. You don't realize that there's some things that are also unraveling behind the scenes. And that if you don't address those things, especially if you don't talk about them, then they're going to get to a point to where they're not correctable.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the takeaway here is you're in this high performance stage of life. You're about to exit the military. You're about to launch, you're working in Spartan Forge, which we'll get into. And so you're high focus, high performance in these areas, but you're also, got something in the back of your head like, oh, this is unraveling a little bit. I need to address this.
Yeah.
The problem is that when people don't address it, and that's what we see at Mighty Oaks is what Mighty Oaks is for.
And my wife pushed me, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably would have just been like, I'm fine, I can deal with this and keep going. But she was like, you need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it actually, you know, had started even back to when my father had died. Like everything that I had to unravel and talk about and think about had really started then, and then kind of gotten to that point. But thankfully for her, because of her and she, you know, encouraging me, and her sister does like, she helps teenagers that are like in bad situations with alcoholic, drug addicted homes. And she had I'd been talking to both of them, and they're like, yeah, you probably should go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get some help. Yeah.
Get some help early on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I mean, we look at Mighty Oaks, a lot of guys that come to Mighty Oaks are like kind of, you know, where all of us are, just kind of want a little nudge and get some, but as guys that are, you know, complete train wrecks because they, you know, waited too long. And so, yeah,
and I could have seen myself waiting too long had I not had the right people around me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what's so important about one of our pillars is a social pillar here at Resilient, is because you need that community around you. We were talking about this earlier. So community is huge. Sometimes it's your wife, which thank the Lord for strong women in our lives. I think everyone sitting here has that, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a brother, it's a mentor, it's a father, hopefully in a lot of situations. It's a pastor, it's a friend, whatever the case may be. It's so important to have that community for anybody, especially as men, as I think men go held unaccountable for a lot of time in their life, and their pride keeps them from allowing people to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And the most powerful thing for a man to have in his life is somebody that's willing to say, hey, you need a course correction, whether it's your wife or whatever the case may be. You have to have that, or else you continue to unravel, and eventually it gets to a point to where you can't correct.
Yeah. Or it's another catastrophic rock bottom.
Yeah. You get hit rock bottom, right?
Right.
Guys, if you don't have precious metals, you got to get your hands on some. The world is not a stable place. Our banking system certainly is not a stable place. So it's important to have precious gold and silver on hand. For me, precious gold, precious silver, and also precious lead to be able to protect yourself. But look, if you are not already into this, you need to go to MidasGoldGroup.com. Our friends there are incredible people. They're incredible patriots. They love America, and they have the best resources on precious metals. The owner, James Clark, is a Marine Corps veteran. He's a patriot, and he is my friend also. And they're just incredible people who know this market inside and out. And you could go there, and if you mention my name, Chad Robichaux, you will get free silver. You'll get some free silver, and you can invest in precious metals and have tangible precious metals on hand in a time of need when those financial markets go down. Go to MidasGoldGroup.com and get your precious metals today. Guys, you heard me say before, you will never hear me promote something that I don't use and don't believe in. One of the supporters of this show is BioPro. I am a believer in this product, and offers you a complete growth factor profile. I mean, you're talking about improving your sleep, growing muscle, releasing your own growth hormones in your body, improving your metabolism, just bone density, the way you feel, your overall mood, your sexual desire, your libido, all these just incredible things that come naturally if you could trigger it from your body. As BioPro does that for you. There's a lot of benefits I've heard of from other pro athletes that take this from special operators. But for me personally, I've definitely noticed the increase in recovery. But the biggest thing I've noticed for me is my sleep. Sleep's important to me. I function well with all the stuff I have to do, from speaking, from writing, to running Mighty Oaks, to doing podcasts like this, and going on international operations. Like, I have to have good sleep in order to be able to function at my highest level. And I was not getting it. I would sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night. It was kind of choppy, and I was doing all kinds of things for years. And as soon as I started taking BioPro, I started getting 8 to 9 hours of solid sleep. That's why I'm just hammering home how much I love this product. The people there are absolutely amazing. They're supporters of our military and first responders. They support Mighty Oaks. And the product is absolutely incredible. You have to try it. Go to BioPro, and if you enter the code BioPro30, you'll get 30% off. That's not my code. I actually don't want a code. I want you to get 30% off. And so enter BioPro30, and you get 30% off. Get yours today.
So you're at this, I guess this good transition in the Spartan Forge. I mean, you're building Spartan Forge. Were you kind of at a point in your military career where you were just like, I'm done? Or were you seeing some of these things that we just kind of hit on where you're like, I'm ready to exit. I need to build this.
Yeah, it was all of that. I mean,
and timing out, right?
Yes, and timing out. And the first thing for me that I knew I had to go was when I got promoted to W4 and I had gotten into this political sphere. I actually wrestled with whether or not I should even be in that sphere for the reasons that I talked about before. And there was also this climate going on where, you'd take like an EO class. And they'd be like, it doesn't matter what you meant when you said something. The only thing that matters is what the person thought when you said that. And I just, do you say that to an engineer? Equal opportunity.
Yeah.
You say that to an engineer, and I'm just like, so then I can be done. My career can be done at any time for any reason.
Yeah.
Because no matter what I say, if this person perceives it in this way, like, how do we build? There's no logic here. How do we do this? And, earlier on, I'd actually had to be part of a 15-6 because I had said something in an EO class where I was like, it was crazy. Long story short, in the EO class, they had said, we need diversity in the military in the ranks. And I was, okay, what do you mean by diversity? Like, what does that mean? She's like, well, we need like a black person. We need a white person. We need an Asian person in the formation. And I'm like, okay, let's just do the thought experiment here. When you read the science, it's clear that a black male and a white male have more in common than a black male and a black female. Like when you actually do like a personality profile, you have two dudes, they're way more similar. But in your rubric, under your rubric, if I have a white female and a black female and an Asian female, now I've met a diversity quota. Like, what are we doing here? And then the second question I asked was, if I use your assumption, then you're saying that all black people are the same? Like, what are we saying?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going with right now? Like, they're all the same and therefore we need one in the formation?
Yeah.
That went over like a fart in church.
Yeah.
Like, it just did not work. And
I think
I knew it was time for me. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think the logical thing is, we use the engineer mindset, for example. The most logical thing is, how about we use the most qualified person for the job?
Perfect.
Because the purpose of the military is winning wars, keeping our nation safe.
Yes, exactly.
Let's take the most qualified person.
Precisely. And I don't care about the color of their skin or their genitalia or what they do with it. The most qualified people. So anyway, that I could see the forest for the trees, and I knew that my time was coming to an end. And then I'd been deployed on the side of a hill doing a collection mission, whether it was, Northern Iraq or Afghanistan. And I thought, and a lot of the stuff that I was building, I got to do 2 years advising what's called DARPA. If you've heard of the DARPA, it's like long story short, it's the mad scientists of the DOD.
Okay.
They just come up with crazy crap and they get to build whatever they want. And I advised there for 2 years, kind of giving them a good ideas on what the military needed. And I deployed with some kit that we came up with and did some stuff downrange. And I thought, a hunter could use this. I'd gotten into hunting when I was like 25. And we talked about, I don't know if we talked about pre-podcast or not, but my brother
talked about your brother taking you and shooting that bow.
Yeah, shooting the bow. Yeah, and I got hooked. And I thought, military guys could use this. I'm sorry, hunters could use this just as a military guy could, because both of them are a military commander and a deer hunter. It sounds a little extreme or cliche, but they're both trying to solve targeting problems. Trying to target an animal or target a bad guy.
Yeah.
It was my job to break that targeting cycle down into demonstratable, repeatable sections that someone could take that abstracted targeting framework and place it on anything they wanted to. So for me, Spartan Forge aligned the intelligence work I'd done in the military with a need for hunters to have that kind of same rigor, or that same targeting mentality brought. And at that point, there were just mapping programs, which really doesn't answer the mail for what hunters need. And hunters are running out of time and running out of things. So Spartan Forge for me, I was really stressed when I was getting out of the military, because I was like, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do that's going to give me the sense of accomplishment that I'm getting from the military right now. So for me, Spartan Forge kind of let the pressure off, because it became apparent to me that there was something else that I could do that kind of checked the blocks that I needed in order to be a functioning member of society.
So can you tell us what it is, like Spartan Forge is? And I mean, this is what you do full time now. This is your life. And
Yep. So at a high level, it's you could look at it when you launch a program. It's a mapping program. There's all kinds of maps in there. There's all types of different maps, topo maps, aerial maps. We even have LiDAR, which is light. It's like using radar, only it's light to map the ground, and it removes trees and allows you to see everything that's going on. It really impacts animal movement. So it's, really of strategic value for hunters. There's journaling. There's an artificial intelligence that we developed using collared deer data. So like a biologist will collar a deer and for learning whatever. And we've taken tons of that collar data and made an AI that kind of predicts animal movement. We just came out with our own large language model that can teach you how to turn a civilian M4 into a SOP Mod 2 build. It can tell you how to do intersection and resection. It can tell you how to scout for white-tailed deer, how to scout for elk, how you can tune in a bow, how to dial in your sight, how to choose your sight. It can tell you anything about hunting or outdoor activities, and it can walk the dog with you and educate you on how to do it. And it's nested inside of that mapping, planning, intelligence framework. It's just an intelligence framework now for hunters instead of for military people.
It's like end user, like simple for.
Yep. It's as simple as you need it to be. You just open it, you can drop pins, you can walk to pins.
Yeah.
So you have a map and you know where your deer stand is, and you want to just walk to that deer stand, drop the pin, and then you can not get lost.
But like, for example, like someone's going hunting public land in, let's say, Colorado, like the chances of finding an elk in public land in Colorado's. So this could bring in that data that'll give you a higher probability because you're picking up patterns of other hunters, right? Share data of other hunters of.
Yep. So you can do draw odds even before you even get out there. Like where am I most likely to draw an elk tag? And then once you will get out there, it tells you where the public land is. It tells you where the private land is. It will, the Cyber Scout can teach you how to scout for the animals, drop pins on the map, put a plan together with your buddies, or put a plan together with the Cyber Scout itself. You can actually do that as well. And it's really born out of, there's two things, and kind of my highest value. We talked about value structures before the podcast started.
Yeah.
My highest value structure is truth, and the individual is generally at the top of my hierarchy. What am I doing in the name of truth to empower the individual? I'm talking professionally, not personally or religiously. So how do I push capability to a single actor to make them as independent and without need of government or handouts or anything else? And I'm doing it utilizing the truth. Like if I can do those two things, then I'm succeeding. So I've got a long list of things that I want to build. Spartan Forge was kind of like the first thing. I kept an old green notes, like remember the old military green books? Yeah. I've got one of those full of ideas of things that I want to build. The first one was Spartan Forge. And there's a whole, but all of them live under that rubric: empower the individual and leverage truth to do it. And how do we do that? So I want to empower hunters to be able to, if they grew up in a home without a dad, or if they grew up in a culture where their hunting wasn't prevalent, they can pick up my app or our app, and they could pick up Spartan Forge, and they can learn how to initiate their own targeting cycle, only they're going after an animal. Everyone's short of time these days. We don't have the time. We don't have the money. The apps that are competitors of mine are sometimes double the price or more. We're one of the cheapest, but we also offer the most capability. And we're able to do that because I'm working 4 jobs. My CEO, 4 jobs in the company. My COO is working 3-5 jobs in the company. My CTO is working. We're doing we're force multipliers.
Yeah.
We've got a company of like 15 people right now, but if you were to examine on paper our output, you'd say there's like 150 people in the company.
Yeah.
And so we can offer the app cheaper and help people gain that individual autonomy in this one domain, which is hunting, and allow them to put venison on the table. But then also with Cyber Scout and the mapping and stuff, if you're a kid in the south side of Chicago and you watch a Cam Hanes video and now you want to go out and shoot a bow after an elk or something, you can spend $39 or $49. You can download my app and it can bring you soup to nuts through how you get after, how you find a bow, how you tune the bow, how you shoot the bow, how you scout for the elk, how you can work out to get in shape for the elk. or if you're going to do deer in someone's backyard, doesn't matter what it is. But ultimately for me, that culminates in you, like 15-year-old Bill Thompson can bring home meat to his mom who's just worked a 12-hour waitress shift.
Yeah.
And now that's one less thing that she's got to do. And that kid now has a sense of meaning and pride that he's done something or she's done something. That's kind of the rubric that I do all of this under. And this is kind of where it started for me.
What's Spartan Forge mean?
Forge, where the weapons are built.
Yeah.
Spartan, just the Spartan mentality.
Yeah.
As you know, in the military, we've got like these command rides and other things like that, whether it's going and see the hot gates at Thermopylae.
Yeah.
And the Spartan mindset and the military Spartan mindset, the minimalist mindset, like I will get the job done with less things than you need and I'll get it done better.
Yeah.
That mentality, and also just being a great military. So,
and a super cool name.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
I like it. Yeah.
Man, I'm curious because, there's a lot of guys in military and in the communities that we love who probably would want to go and launch something, like a business, but it's actually scary.
It's frightening. It's terrifying.
And you were just talking about something I think is super important. And it's your why, and you kind of have your why, your ground truth. I'm going to shout out Donnie Dust too, who taught me the term ground truth. It's like strip everything away. What is the truth is why you're making the decision you do this thing. And you have that ground truth of empowering the individual. But I'm curious, man, like, was that hard to be like, I'm going to launch this business? I've never launched a business before. This is just an idea. Like what was your mindset? What made you stick through it? Cause I'm sure there were parts where you're like, oh, maybe I made the wrong decision, or maybe there wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to what you just asked, but, so what I will do a lot of times when I'm facing an important decision, I'll just sit at the end of my bed, close my eyes and think about it and wait for the Holy Spirit to tell me. I mean, you don't have to take this religiously. It's religious for me. But you can just sit and ask your subconscious, what should I be doing and how should I be doing this? For me, that's a dialogue with God, with the Holy Spirit. For others, like abstract that all away and just use this however you want to. Sit on the edge of your bed and ask yourself a question and think hard about nothing but the question. And for me, when I did that, I had told the idea to people and they were like, you should do that. Like, that sounds awesome. One of them again being my wife, like, just go and do it. And when I sat at the end of my bed and thought about it, it was always affirmation. Like, that's where you need to go. That's what you need to do. And I was just last week in North Carolina, and Tim Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard were running like a veteran suicide awareness board.
Yeah.
And trying to create awareness for the same things that we're talking about today. And one of the things the military is really bad at, we're great at the post hoc. We're great at addressing things after problems have occurred. We're not so great at the pre, like, except for Humvees for some reason and equipment, like PMCS, preventive maintenance checks and services. Like, everyone's filled out a -10 in the military, in the Army at least. Like, the Humvee has the stuff that it needs and it's ready to go. But we don't do that from like, hey, we're sending these people to combat.
Right.
And they're going to go see some grotesque things, and they need to know the why, because that will sustain them through these things. And if we don't give them that, they're going to have to put it together later when it's too late.
Right. On the back end.
Yes, on the back end. And that can create some real problems. For me, when I was in the military and I was experiencing those problems, there were two things that really helped me. One was religion. I'm Lutheran, which is like kind of like a poor man's Catholic, I guess you'd call it. Martin Luther, but it doesn't matter. I'm a Lutheran, and I didn't really, that's a whole nother podcast. Wasn't really resolute in my faith until maybe 10 years ago. But that helped me a lot. But then the second thing that also helped me, and it's kind of become cliche now. I remember when I'm going to keep chasing rabbits. I'm sorry. It's how my mind works.
That's the point.
I remember when Chris Stapleton came out, I knew who he was from this band that he was in called the Steel Drivers.
Yeah.
And I love this. My wife and I loved the Steel Drivers, and he was kind of like our little secret. And I was in Afghanistan actually, and when he blew up, 2017, I think, or something like that. And I sent her a message and I said, we've lost he's no longer our thing, right? Like, now everyone knows about him.
Yeah.
And I was saddened by that. But it's a good thing, right? Because now Chris Stapleton's in the zeitgeist and everyone knows who he is. And we're talking about him today. For me, I had the same thing happen with Marcus Aurelius. and then Epictetus, who was a slave, who had also wrote Stoic philosophy. And I think that's one of the great things about Stoicism and philosophy was the two greatest proprietors of it were an emperor of Rome, who's probably the best emperor of Rome, and a slave. Epictetus was a slave.
Yeah.
And those two people used the moral rubric, and we're talking about them 2,000 years later. And that what that means to me is it works for everyone. And so I started reading Stoicism for other reasons. I had a commander in Iraq that had recommended it to me, and he had went to West Point, and they taught it at West Point, which makes sense because it's kind of like this silver-aged mindset for people. And it kind of, and I think the point I'm trying to make here is, well, first off, I was saddened to hear Marcus Aurelius start getting mentioned like 3 or 4 years ago. Because I was like, another thing of mine has gotten
little secrets got out.
Little secrets got out. But the second thing, it wasn't my secret. It's a very egotistical way of looking at things, but it's the way I felt, and that was the truth.
Yeah.
But then the second thing was, the military has neutered our chaplains,
Yes.
where they do not get to talk openly about their faith, and because they might offend someone.
They're resource officers,
right,
at best.
Right. So what are they there for? Like, what's the purpose? But then the second thing is, what I think Stoicism is the right thing, but I think in basic training, I think in military units, there should be, there's sergeant's time training, but I think there should be like hardening of the soldier's mind, of the troop's mind, of the person's mind, and understanding, this is the conquest that you're on. This is where your life's going to take you. And this is how you deal with the grotesqueries of life. And for me, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Marcus Aurelius had no reason to be as good as he was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was the emperor. And if he wanted to have everyone's head lopped off, he could do it. If he wanted to, whatever he wanted, he ruled the known world, but he didn't disgrace himself. And then with Epictetus, he was a slave, and he served under a guy who served under Nero. So like the worst possible place to try to be. And he kept his moral resolve and didn't sacrifice himself or his virtue. So that to me seemed like a good system. So I voraciously read that stuff as much as I could. And that really equipped me better than I could have ever done it on my own. And for me, that the military really didn't do that well. So I brought that up when we were talking at that suicide prevention panel that I can't believe we're just getting back to me saying that, but we are really bad about putting things on the front end and hardening people before we send them out there or giving them a why. And I think that is it's really an oversight.
Yeah.
We do it with equipment. Why are we not doing it with people's minds?
I could encourage you a little bit. The military, I agree with you 100%. The military has done a terrible job of that. Our chaplains have been completely hamstrung. One of the things that we get to do at Mighty Oaks as a non-government agency, NGO, the government's not getting to do is this resiliency training. And so even this weekend coming up, I'm going to be at Marine Corps boot camp in Paris Island. I'm going to
awesome.
I'm going to speak to probably, I would guess, because I don't know the number of advance, but typically over the last decade, it's been in groups of like 3,000 to 5,000 troops. And I'm speaking to them on resiliency, mental, mind, body, spirit, social. And my emphasis, because of my personal story, is my spiritual pillar. And I get to share my faith with them and leave a resource. We left behind. We've spoken about 500,000 now in the
That's
resiliency,
awesome.
the preventative side that we're talking about here. And I'll leave behind these books and on spiritual resiliency. We've given away about 400,000 copies of them now.
Wow.
So while the chaplains don't get to do it in the military, I don't believe, I'm thankful the military has opened the door to allow me to do this. I know right now I'm one of only 2 people the Marine Corps allows to go do this at boot camp. And I've done 10 years at the West Coast and 3 years. I'm going to 3 years now at the East Coast. Even though I'm thankful they welcome us to, this isn't being done by the government. It's not being done by the military. It's being done by volunteer, non-government organizations, nonprofits outside the military. And but I'm thankful that God orchestrates that and has protected our ability to continue to do that, because I'm sure there's people that don't want us doing that.
For sure.
And but we've continued to do it, and we're going to keep doing it. And so if it is encouraging, and I'll be there next weekend doing that.
It is encouraging to me, and I'm glad to hear that, because I fell into these things by happenstance or just by somebody recommending it to me. And then I went down that road. But of course, the military and the government has a way of running things. So I wouldn't want to see Marcus Aurelius turn into a PowerPoint slide.
Yeah.
That would not serve it. But when people start to understand the power of these things and why you don't talk about something for 2,000 years unless there's something there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And there's definitely something there with those guys.
I don't know if a lot of people realize this is something I shared this weekend at a conference I was speaking at. Since 1776, the United States military has given a Bible to every service member that has come in the military until 2009 when President Obama came in. And that's when, so you probably wouldn't have been part of receiving that in recruit training, or maybe, some of it's phased out in some places, but 2009 President Obama took that away. So for, over 200 years, our nation's military, now, do they have to take it or not? No. But it was available for them. And whether people are Christians or non-Christians and believe that should be the case, it should be available. If anybody deserves a right for our government to provide that to them. Now we'll give it to them. We'll give it in prisons, but we took it away from giving it to our troops.
Right.
And
it's freedom of religion, not from.
Right. Yeah. So this is, these are things that our country is facing, and people call it political or not, but this affects our national security, our military readiness, our military resiliency. Affects our national security and affects our ability to defend people around the world who can't defend themselves.
Yeah, and if people aren't Christian and they don't want the book, then we can get them a Quran, we can get them a Torah, whatever they want. We can get them Marcus Aurelius, we can get them meditations.
Yeah.
But yeah, it blows my mind that people they'll talk about, there's separation of church and state. It's like, well, that's not anywhere in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights.
It's not in the Constitution.
That was in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote.
Yep.
And it's not a thing. It's read your First Amendment again. It's not there.
Yeah. It was written to protect the church from the government, not the other way around.
Yeah. And when you read the Federalist Papers, when John Jay, all of those guys, it's evident that they believed you couldn't be an American or you wouldn't reach the highest. You wouldn't be the best American that you could be unless you were a Christian. And that there was no way that you could exceed. This place had to be engaged with from a moral framework that it was built on Christianity and the value of the individual, and the smallness of the federal government. And we've just gone the total opposite.
No.
And when you talk to people in government about that, they just look at you like you have a phallus growing from your forehead.
Yeah.
Like you're crazy.
Yeah. Almost like you're a militia, which the Constitution accounts for.
Yeah,
by the way.
Accounts for perfectly, by the way.
Yeah.
It's insanity to me.
Yeah. I mean, I love that story. Like what you're talking about, the truth and the why. And because obviously we're promised hardship. We're going to go through hard times, and you have to be able to grasp that why and that ground truth of why you're doing what you're doing.
I mean, also just like a very small thing from it that I always tell myself is you're not affected by things. You're affected by your response to things. And that was it's a big meditations thing, but when things suck, you can parse that away and put that together, and it can help you. That's
a conclusion I came to. And a lot of times when I speak, I talk about that. The biggest change and shift for me in my life was when I realized that the reason I was in the rock bottom that I was in the dark place I was in was not because of what happened to me or what I seen or did. It was because of the choice I made in response to those things.
Yeah.
And, for me, the Bible gave me a blueprint for making better choices.
Absolutely.
So what's coming up in your life? What do you have? You got anything on the horizon?
So Spartan Forge, we just released our first large language network, which is just like a ChatGPT or a Google Bard or any of those other ones, but it's for hunting. We prioritize only peer-reviewed science, and we prioritize the truth. So you're not getting any craziness, any left-wing craziness or right-wing, because, I would have considered myself a right-wing person up until a few years ago.
Yeah.
I have almost nothing in common with Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Or what he believes. Yeah. So
I'm right there with you.
That is what it is.
I don't think he believes anything right
now.
Who
knows?
Yeah, he just stares and freezes.
So it's in the middle. It's not it's not even in the middle. It's not on the spectrum of political thought. It's just truth.
Yeah.
And that's how the neural network runs. And we released that. I'm working on other things in the background, less now because Spartan Forge is taking up so much of my time.
How can people learn about Spartan Forge? Spartan Forge. SpartanForge.com or
.ai. SpartanForge.ai, or just look us up on Instagram, Spartan.forge. I spend 3 hours every morning. I did it this morning, answering all of the customer service tickets and doing all of the engagement on social media. So for the foreseeable future, if you have a problem with the app, you have a question about the app, you're dealing with me.
Nice.
Just at this size of the company, I feel like I need to have the pulse of what the consumer wants or doesn't want. And it takes a lot of my time, but I do it. So if you have a question about the app or you want to see something else built or whatever, We do veterans events since our very first year. I came out of pocket our first year to do it. We do a veterans hunt at the end of the season. There'll be stuff for people if there are veterans listening. If they want to sign up and come do a hunt with us, we do a giveaway. We raise money. I had a buddy who's a SEAL who died in 2016. His name was Devin Grube. His mom runs a memorial golf tournament for every year. We donate money to that, and then we also do this year. We're going to do stuff for Independence Fund and some other organizations. Obviously,
Sarah Verardo.
Yeah. Obviously, I'd like to donate some Spartan Forge stuff to your guys' thing as well. We can talk that offline after this, but all of these things, if I can use what I'm doing with Spartan Forge to benefit everything that we've talked about today, that's the why.
Yeah.
The highest part being the truth and the strategic stuff we talked about. But if I can benefit veterans, if I can help that kid who wants to learn how to hunt and get outdoors, and experience nature, because we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can do all of those things, then I'm really, this is not a cliche. I'm really living the dream right now. Being with great guys like you, talking about these things, building this app, helping to benefit the people that I can, and doing it all within the rubric of the two things that I hold most dear, which is the truth and the individual. I could die tomorrow. I really could.
That's awesome. Man.
Yeah.
Not awesome that you could die tomorrow,
But
No.
you get me.
Yeah. No, man, it's an amazing story of resilience. I mean, honestly, there's so many trails that we could have gone off of. You're a very humble person. You're a very positive person, but I hear some amazing hardship from family loss and your time in the military, and you've stuck really solid with your truth and your why coming forward to make it to this day. So, I mean,
really represent the resilient.
You absolutely represent the resilient man, the resilient brand. So appreciate you coming on the show for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks.
We got some gifts for you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So Midas Gold Group, veteran owned gold and silver. You said you're a collector of gold and silver. Yeah.
Yes.
So one of these pieces of silver for you, ounce of silver.
Oh, wow.
Midas Gold Group. If anybody watching wants to get their own gold and silver, you go to MidasGoldGroup.com, and you mention me, you get a free piece of silver.
And you said you're veteran owned.
Veteran owned.
Yes.
Yeah. James Clark, Marine Corps veteran. Awesome dude. And I'm a strong believer in having tangible gold and silver in hand. Apocalypse.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what people don't understand about gold and silver too is it's the only way nerds like me will be able to make you electronics post the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So people are always like, why is gold and silver so valuable today? It's like, well, because your phone, because of every computer, because of anything I need to do with any type of circuitry or voltage
requires
it.
Yeah.
So super valuable.
Yeah. I'm not against Bitcoin, but when the grid goes down,
right,
get your Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's not did a bunch for you.
Yeah. Gator's glasses is we got a pair here for you.
Sweet.
These are Deltas, but you could pick these, or get our friends at Gator says any pair you want, we'll custom and you get them sent right to you. But Gator's glasses, as you know,
those are sweet.
Super sick, man.
Been around the military and, for decades, and
I used to wear them. I had a pair that I got, I believe it was issued them that, or I got them on a cool guy discount or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wore them when I rode my Harley back in the day.
Nice.
Because they're super, stuff coming up on the road, or I don't ride anymore, but I used to.
I mean, you got the ballistic lenses. We were in Ukraine and aluminum frames. So they're awesome.
Awesome.
We got a Mighty Oak swag bag. You can dig through it, but all the Mighty Oak stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have the Sean Ryan gummies. Everybody keeps. I went on Sean Ryan's show recently. Everybody keeps asking.
I watched it. It was great.
Oh, thanks, man.
It was great.
Yeah, everyone's asking about the gummies. I just got back this weekend, like in my book table. Everybody's like, "How was those gummies?"
They're gummies, man.
Yeah.
Just gummies.
Yeah.
I got this for you, and I'm sorry I didn't bring you something.
Oh, bro, it's all good.
I'm a nerd in all ways, but a good nerd, I think. But I like collecting old Army technical manuals.
Yeah,
and whenever I go anywhere, like I just spent the week with Tim Kennedy. I brought him one on special operation advisor roles in like the 1940s or 50s or something like that, or special forces advisor roles. I thought, I don't know why, but I looked at this one and thought, I think this is the right one, but it's the use and installation of booby traps.
That's definitely,
and
that's definitely the right one.
It's from 1956, and it smells.
Like the official Antarctic cookbook.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, give that thing a smell. Tell me if that doesn't smell like 1956.
It does.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
I wouldn't have knew what you were talking about until I smelled it.
Yeah. Let him give it a sniff there, because it just, you feel like you're in your grandpa's like back office or something.
Oh,
Whenever
wow.
you
I
used
didn't
to-
know what 1956 smelled
There
like.
it is.
It smelled like it's been sitting in a cedar chest for 50 years.
Yeah, exactly.
That's freaking
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
This
so
is super cool, man.
I pick those up everywhere and
Yeah.
give them to friends of mine. And my thing for Christmas every year is I'll send my friends all a book. Anybody who works with me knows they get a book from me every year.
That's awesome.
But I think for mill guys, these old,
Yeah.
these are so cool.
So cool.
Oh man,
Yeah.
these booby traps are so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna need gold, silver, lead,
And booby
and-
traps.
and booby traps. So
What else could a guy ask
getting
for?
more equipped. Yeah, yeah, I'm getting more equipped. Well, man, yeah, thanks again for being on the show. I'm definitely a big fan now of you and Spartan Forge. So
I appreciate it. Thanks,
yeah,
guys.
and,
Yeah.
I'm a big hunter myself, so I'm gonna
Yeah, maybe we'll, man, there's so many veins. We might have another. We get
Well,
you back
let's
out
get
for
you
another
guys on a
show, bro.
veterans hunt too.
I'm
Like
in.
not this year, next year, something like that. Whenever it works, get
Yeah.
it together and let's go. It's a great time. I'll send you guys a video from last year.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of veterans out, got some venison, talk stories over the fire and kind of decompress. And it's a great time.
Let's do it.
All right,
Let's
guys.
do it.
Thanks.
All right, awesome,
Thanks, brother.
Awesome show.
See ya. What's up, guys? Sean here, one of your hosts at Resilient. Thank you for watching the show. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any bonus content and future episodes. We have some amazing guests that share their story of resilience, and you won't want to miss it.